of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Christ is in our midst. I remember going to a restaurant once, and the food was really good, and I enjoyed it. It was a Mexican restaurant. I like Mexican food. And it was very tasty, and everything, the spices were just right, and the meat was just right. And I said, I think I found a good restaurant I can go to. And I went back, I don't know, a couple months later maybe, and I ordered the same thing I had last time. It was one of those meals that kind of leaves a memory in your mind, and I ordered the same thing. And I got it, and I started to eat it, and I said, this is not the same as when I had it last time. And as I kind of forced the meal down, I realized that something had happened somewhere along the line from the processing of the food to the plate. There was a change somewhere along the line. And the consistency of the restaurant was not one that I was going to take a chance a third time, so I haven't been back to that restaurant. It's nobody's restaurant in here, so I don't think anybody owns a Mexican restaurant in a Greek church, but anyways. So I didn't go back. I haven't been back to that restaurant. And I was reading an article at one point that said most restaurants fail within 6 months. Most. And if a restaurant makes it past the 6-month mark, their chances of long-term longevity of the success of the restaurant is very possible, unless something changes. And that change that they had said was improperly investing or not paying the bills on time and losing credit, or other mismanagements, or somebody skimming off the books, or whatever the case is. But one of the main things that was the problem was the chef leaving and going somewhere else and taking the recipes with him or her. And as I look at this gospel reading today and the epistle reading, it's a reminder to all of us that even when we start the sermon, we said Christ is in our midst. He was, is, and always shall be. He is consistent. God is consistent. In fact, the epistle of the Hebrews that St. Paul writes, in the 13th verse, it says that Christ is the same, yes, today, yesterday, and forever. Christ is the same. He is not changing anything. The recipe is the same. There is no alterations, there is no change, and who he was, he is, and who he is, he will always be. And that's a calling for us. And we hear in the gospel reading today about who are we? Are we the ones who give and lend and love and forgive only to those whom we like, or who we know will return back to us what we offer to them? Or are we the same for everyone? Are we consistent with everyone? Consistency is the key, one of the keys to Christianity. To success in our spiritual life is to be consistent, not to be one way in church, a different way in the parking lot, a different way at work, a different way in front of children, a different way in front of adults. What we watch, what we say, how we act has to be consistent throughout our entire life. We can't go from one thing to the other, because then who are we? Who do we say that we are to Christ if we are all these different things? Because God can look at us one moment and say, yes, everything you're doing is great, and then the next moment say, this is really off. Something is missing. The consistency of your recipe is wrong, and it's a failure. The gospel reading is a reminder to us that we have to be the same for everyone. As difficult as that might be and sound, it's not. Being authentically you every day is as easy as saying, who am I? And what do I have to be in front of the world? Maybe that's not the arrogant, egotistical person that we might portray in the workforce as being the top, top person and no one is better than me, and putting other people down so that we can progress in our work? Is that how we want to come across? Or is it to do what we're called to do with joy, with love in our hearts, and to follow God and to be the same, consistent? We can't have relationships with other people if we're not consistent. Other people will not have relationships with us if they're not consistent. If you think of people who may be difficult to interact with in your lives, those people are the people that you don't know what you're going to get. You know, it's kind of that trick bag, you know. It's like, what are they going to be today? Everybody, I see some of you smiling because everybody's got a relative like that somewhere. You show up and you're like, oh, what's this going to be? You're at the door, ding dong, and then you're like, what is this going to be? Is this going to be a nightmare, or is this going to be a beautiful visit? What's going to happen? And that inconsistency cannot start with us. We have to be the same. We have to be merciful as the gospel calls us to be, as Christ is merciful. But most of all, we look at what St. John the Evangelist writes about God, and he says that God is one word. He defines, out of all the theological books, out of everything you would read, St. John the Evangelist says that the definition of God is not something, you know, with volumes and volumes of words, but it's one word, that God is love. And what is love? Good. And what are we called to do? To be good consistently, day after day after day. It's just to be good, to be consistent, to be loving, and to be good in God's eyes and good to everyone around us, even those who mistreat us. We are called to be good. That's where it gets a little tricky, because everyone wants the last word, and we want to say, I really want to teach you the lesson so that you will be better to me next time. But we're not called to do that. We're called to just be good, not to be judges, not to be condemning, but simply to be good. I pray that every day, through the life of the church, that your lives are becoming more consistent, that the struggles that you have are not these waves of, I got it, oh, I don't have it, I got it, I don't have it, but that it's a consistent struggle that we have, the consistent growth that we have, and most of all, a consistent love for God, for our lives, and for our fellow neighbors and friends and family, so that we can be good in all things, at all times, so that when someone looks at us and they see us coming, they say, I know exactly who I'm going to encounter. This is not a stranger. This is not someone who is going to be one way in public, one way in private, but this is the true, authentic person that we're all called to be. Amen.